I'd like to begin by offering my deep gratitude to God for our beloved teachers, Colton and Jonathan Muro, and for this beautiful, sacred, holy polarity that we're able to come to with our co-disciples. And I give gratitude to God for having co-disciples to walk the path with. And we bless all of our streamers who are unable to be with us today. May all be blessed in Jesus' holy name. Amen. So the title of my sharing this morning is Human Nature. And it's kind of a compilation of what I didn't get to in last year's It's Elemental talk here at Morro Bay, and the talk that I gave in Sequoia on nature and the elements. And I hope to be able to describe how the elements comprising the natural world are the same elements that we humans use to operate our systems. Henry Colton has, and I've broken this up into sections as per Maurice. So the first section is entitled Inside, Outside. Henry has instructed that we are a microscopic representation of nature. Nature's laws and principles of operation are embedded within us. From Ethical ESP. Man is governed by the same cosmic laws governing the plant in the field. As Jesus said, "Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They toil not, neither do they spin." From St. Matthew. Henry continues, implanted into man's body and his mind are portals of energy, recording nature's flow, and also the communicating wavelengths of cosmic energy existing from mind to mind. In all aspects of the living world, the outside always influences the inside. The cells inside of our bodies are always communicating with their inner and outer environments. And this is a quote that Gillian used in his last family chapel talk from Henry. For what is inside is outside, and what is outside is inside. It never misses. At no time are we separated from the influences of the natural world. This next section is entitled Nature Teaches Us. Nature is not just a static place where we visit to take a walk. Nature is a vibrant, energetic atmosphere filled with information that we need for a healthy life. Nature is one of God's greatest teaching tools. From Ethical ESP. Nature works with the planetary rhythms and cosmic energy to keep alive the energy flow in the vital or etheric body, thus providing for man in sickness and in health. One is recharged with psychical energy in the etheric body through desert experience, mountain climbing, altitude heights, through bathing in pure water, in oceans, in springs. One removes the psychical soil or karmic effluvia from his etheric body. This is still Henry. Through prayer in nature's environment, one draws to himself the power to command nature's psychical energy and becomes a healer conductor or distributor of spiritual reviving and resuscitating power. The energies of the elements of nature, when properly distributed in our bodies, can completely restore harmony to our human systems. From Henry. This is kind of the summary. All substances of the flesh body begin with and end with nature. This little section is entitled Destruction. The more our understanding of life is isolated from the greater environment around us, the more likely we are to contribute to the creation of a society of sickness and disease. Many people are still oblivious to the relationship between human health and the rampant destruction that we have imposed upon the environment. This is the same environment which gave us birth, and it is still trying to give us life. Humans are not an isolated event. We are in a symbiotic, sacred relationship with all aspects of our environment. Other people are part of our environment. We need each other, and we need to revere all kingdoms with humility, gratitude, and respect. Human to human, human to animal, human to plant, human to angelic. Our modern lifestyle and belief systems have created a way of being that isolates us from and makes us feel superior to the greater environment in which we live. To be specific, we feel superior to the soil, to the earth, which we think of as dirt, and without which we cannot survive. We cannot continue to devastate and destroy the microbiome of our soils. We treat soil and earth as blank canvases that we can dig up and embed with genetically modified seeds, which require toxic chemicals to be able to grow. Our isolationist perspective is literally missing the forest for the trees. We feel superior to worms and bees. We feel superior to plants and trees. We have an egoistic king of the jungle consciousness. We have an unconscious ranking system. Human beings at the top of the list, then mammals, all the way down to bacteria and fungi, each of which we couldn't live without if they didn't exist. We assume that the natural world is not conscious and that we are superior to it and separate from it because we have large brains, we have sophisticated electronics, and we walk upright. And we have the arrogance to think that we have and will continue to conquer nature and extract from her whatever we need and want at the moment for our benefit. We have abused Divine Mother, and as Anne-Marie has said, she has taken out her broom and she is showing us who is boss. One of the reasons that we have the diseases we have in modern life is because we do not understand the influence of the elements of the natural world upon human life. Nature is always trying to teach us how the elements of the natural world operate, but we do not always listen because we do not understand that we are part of this nature. This often means we have to learn the hard way. From Anne-Marie, men will be forced to return to nature through cataclysms in the earth, in the water, particularly coming from the polar regions. Convulsions of a cosmic magnitude will become more and more apparent to the perceptive. This next section is entitled, "The Scientific Method Isolates." I've been having some very interesting discussions with a client who was a client of mine about 45 years ago, and he moved away, but he's come back. This guy is he's a physicist, he's an engineer, and he's a venture capitalist. And he's working with a Nobel laureate at the Rockefeller Institute in New York City. This man discovered the biological clocks that operate our genes in consort with the circadian rhythms of light and dark. So he's no dummy. These scientists are extracting genes and isolating them under a microscope to track their behavior. The limitation of this method is that the cells under study have been taken away from the environmental influences in which they live. These environmental influences are the non-human bacteria, viruses, fungi, and protozoa that influence the behavior of human cells and their genetic components. To a certain degree, our current understanding of biology and chemistry is flawed because our scientific experiments rely upon methods that extract and isolate and follow a linear cause and effect logic. The closer we look at an isolated particle, the more we omit looking at the environment in which the particle lives. There is no nature in a petri dish because we isolate the event from its surroundings. Unfortunately, this model, to some degree, this isolated linear model, can only take us so far and no farther. So instead of cause and effect, eventually might be more accurate to think of cause and conditions interacting in human systems. And by this I mean we need to study the interactions of cell biology with its environments. We need to understand the psychology of human beings in relationship to the environments which influence them. Science's isolationist method has created a veil which must be pulled back, or our vision of life will always be clouded through a glass darkly, or a petri dish darkly. The Human Genome Project, the research was done in 1992 to 1996, was designed to map the entire genetic structure of human beings. What this research discovered was that the sanctity of genetic determination is just not true. We are not as genetically complex as we have been told to believe. Turns out, human beings have more genes than a fruit fly, but less genes than a flea. A fruit fly has 13,000 genes. We have 20,000 genes, and a flea has 30,000 genes. And what the scientists were trying to do is to correlate one gene with one protein that it might make. But the dilemma got worse when they don't know how the body makes over 400,000 proteins from just 20,000 genes. The Human Genome Project discovered that our genes are important in our overall development. But what is more important is the environment we live in and how our environment interacts with our genes and influences their expression. And I've talked about this before, but this is known as epigenetics. Epi meaning above or over. In other words, epigenetics studies the influences outside of the cell nucleus, where the DNA resides. And so this has, our entire medical paradigm now has been based upon this isolationist idea that genes run everything. Almost our entire medical research economic paradigm is based upon narrow vision, isolationist science, and genetics. The budget for all aspects of medical research science is nearly now as large as our entire defense spending. This includes clinical trials and principal scientific investigators appointed by government and academic institutions, involving billions and billions and now trillions of dollars every year around the world. This isolationist focus on genetics leads to the creation of multinational corporations, exerting exorbitant power over funding supplies everywhere in the world, patents, academic positions, IPOs, startup companies, dividends for stock investors, NIH grants, all chasing after one thing, a genetic understanding of life through the process of genetic isolation in a human system. A human system does not know anything but multi-layered complexity and reciprocal maintenance in its healthy functioning. There are no isolated processes in human physiology. This next section is entitled Communication. So we need to stop thinking of ourselves and our fellow human beings as self-contained, independent, individual units. We are more accurately described as walking ecosystems with microbial systems embedded within us. We are in turn embedded within the greater Earth, which is in turn embedded in a larger universe, which can be likened to a living organism. We are in an interdependent relationship with all that is inside of us and all that is outside of us. An interdependent viewpoint can help us to think about reality more as a process or a series of interactions, rather than as an isolated set of independent events or entities that we classify in our minds as objects. We are part of a complex ecosystem of diversified species. We are more other than self. In our cellular makeup, our human cells are estimated to be only 43% of the total composite of cells in our body. I found this is a sobering and fascinating fact. The rest of our human cells are made up of microscopic bacteria, viruses, fungi, protozoa, and gut and skin viromes and microbes of all sorts that populate our entire being. So we have this vast, abundant life within us that is not of human cellular origin. These non-human colonies send signals to our human cells telling us what is going on. Information is being carried back and forth between our non-human cells and cells we actually manufactured through our genetic codes. We have within us an information superhighway that no computer, no AI can ever come close to in complexity and interaction. We're talking about quadrillions of information events per second taking place throughout our entire lifetime. This next section is entitled Reciprocal Maintenance at a Cellular Level. Metabolism is the study of how energy is produced, and it turns out that our mitochondria play a key role in how we generate enough energy in the form of ATP. Remember, ATP is adenosine triphosphate. It's just the fuel that the cells use to operate the body, to repair the body, and to respond to internal cues and outside invaders. All of this is happening in a microsecond, and we aren't aware of any of it. If we were, we would probably slow it down. I was taught in school and have read some fairly recent microbiology books, the mitochondria are tiny organelles within our cells. And apparently that is not true. The mitochondria are actually tiny bacterioids that inhabit our cells and orchestrate almost every aspect of cellular life in human physiology. So they're visitors. We thought that the nucleus inside the cell was the gene's control center. Scientists have now discovered that something from outside, these bacterioids called mitochondria, are now embedded inside our cells and operate as the engines of life that give us our vitality to get up every morning and live our lives the way that we choose to do so. We actually have trillions of single-celled organisms living within us. Gives new meaning to the phrase, we are not alone. This means that our cell-to-cell communication is mostly coordinated by something that is not human, at least not how we define human. The mitochondria tunes over 70 trillion cells into the eloquent symphony that we call life. In turn, the mitochondria rely upon receiving the right signals from the microbes in our gut. Gut to brain. Our gut bacteria supply the energy which our mitochondria need to do their job, which is to produce that ATP that I talk about for every cellular event in our systems. So she or he who has the most mitochondria has the most ATP. Mitochondria produce electrical signals that allow cells to communicate with each other instantaneously through light energy. We are just lit up electrical light. And that light energy that the cells are using to exchange with one another are called photons. Nature, in the form of bacteria, viruses, etc., is the cadence keeper for the electrical symphony in our bodies. So the timekeeper of these cadences that Nobel laureate is studying come from the outside, from the alternation of rhythms of light and dark. Nature in the form of excuse me, I already said that. This is why cells, which act as batteries, can produce so much more energy relative to their size, because they have these battery chargers of mitochondria embedded within them. Every cell receives energetic assistance from the tiny mitochondrial bacteria, which acts as a charger, enabling the cell to produce more energy. Mitochondria send signals to help our genes produce the right proteins to make all types of cells and all types of tissues. And that's where, when they were doing that genome project, where they just didn't get it yet, that these outside influences are part of what magnifies the number of proteins that we can produce given the number of genes that we have. Now, non-human mitochondria bacteria are telling the human gene system how to get the most out of life by providing the right components for a perfect and very complex example of reciprocal maintenance. This is reciprocal maintenance in action, outside, inside, inside, outside. Our cells and our mitochondria need each other to make life work the way it has over all these millennia. This next little section is entitled The Illusion of Isolation and Singularity. When we evolve a more universal perspective of life, we know we are not separate from our environment. We understand that reciprocal maintenance connects everyone and everything. Believing in isolation in our world is an illusion. We must unveil this illusion. We are more than singular entities encased in a physical body. Henry writes, Jesus desired that man know himself not as a singular person, but as a universal man. This means we are eternally connected to everyone and everything. It is for us to understand and appreciate that we are wrapped in the energies of cosmic electricity that can give us our authentic vitality by connecting us to the radiance of divine light. This next little section is entitled The Electrome, E-L-E-C-T-R-O-M-E, from Ethical ESP. Again, a key statement from Henry Colton that summarizes this talk. The physical body of man and his etheric or life body is nature. That's a capital N, encased in a body. The physical body of man and his etheric or life body is nature, encased in a body. So we are a human manifestation of the natural world, and we use the elements embedded in nature to operate all of our human systems. Electricity, magnetism, water, movement, sound are all nutrients that we require to live in the world. When we are deficient, for example, in sunlight and water, we have insufficient charge in our cells to operate normal physiological mechanisms. We are basically columns of water, shaped like an antenna. And we bring in these frequencies, and we use the frequencies from multiple sources around the planet. When combined, these frequencies create a resonance within us that can be likened to our own unique electromagnetic signature, which is very much like a fingerprint. There are no two fingerprints alike, so there are no two electrons alike. A cancer researcher that I've been reading and studying and listening to, his name is Zach Bush, B-U-S-H, commented in an internet interview on the variety and volume of electrical frequencies that we interact with every second. Quote, "Stars from billions of light years away are bombarding your column of water with information. The electron flow from the aurora borealis, the northern lights, sweeping down upon our Earth. The 100,000 lightning strikes per minute each day on our planet, bringing down all that electricity from the cosmos." This is electric rain, basically. All these types of electricity are vibrating our Earth and vibrating our bodies. The atmospheric vibration of electric rain charging our Earth explains why it feels so good to walk barefoot on the wet sand at the beach. We are getting a negative electrical charge from the wet sand that lights up our cells and energizes us through the conduction in our feet. This cradle of light vibration is known in science as the electron, a community of electricity in nature and in human systems that runs everything. We are run by electricity. The dictionary definition of the electron is all the electrical dimensions and properties of cells, tissues, and whole organisms. And I would add to that all the electrical properties from the natural world that we are embedded in. There is an expanding new field of medicine that is trying to manipulate the human biofield or electron to treat cancer, Parkinson's disease, heal bones, improve wound healing, induce flow states into the brain, and regulate the heartbeat. Electrical influences may turn out to be a more important factor in human functioning than the genetic code. So now they're looking at what they call the bioelectric code, trying to figure out the signature that each of us has in terms of these multidimensional frequencies. So with that thought in mind, we are physics before we are biology. We are energy before we are physical matter. Our teachers have talked about the previous etheric states that we embody. The electromagnetic fields emanating in and out of our bodies, highly individualized frequencies for each of us, is what makes us our unique selves. Resonant frequencies inform our cells as to how to function in harmony with the resonant frequencies of nature. And as we have learned from our internship readings of the Akhenaten book, the souls from Atlantis and Lemuria, who were reincarnated into Egypt, understood the electrical and magnetic forces in their environments and in themselves. They regularly communicated with animals and communicated energetically and telepathically with one another. They did not perceive a distinction between the inner and outer worlds. They believed there was no separation between different levels of embodiment and used electrical and magnetic energies for day and night communication. We do not understand and respect this complex communication system. And in the body, the interior, it's called interoception, I-N-T-E-R-ception, which just means all the mechanisms of communication. How does your liver know that your stomach needs X? Electricity, electrical photon exchange. So we do not understand and respect the complex communication systems of the body called interoception, which relates to internal communication between different systems in our body. Again, none of this reaches the conscious mind, or we would slow it down and when we needed fast repair, we would die before it came because our conscious mind would get in the way. So God has implanted in there a nice little fail-safe mechanism to keep us out of it. There is an ongoing, very sophisticated exchange of information between the microbes of the human gut and the neurotransmitters of our brain that significantly influences the quality of our physiology. The more disconnected we are from nature, the more we lose our biodiversity inside and outside of ourselves. So some of the new research is, so there's the Human Genome Project. There's now also the Human Microbiome Project, which is mapping all the gut microbes that we have and correlating them to either the presence or absence of a particular microbe with a symptom or a disease. And one of the prominent interrelationships is the deficiency of two species of microbes in the gut and our predisposition for all kinds of neurodementia processes. So cognitive delay, dementia, Alzheimer's, etc., etc. Directly correlated 1-to-1 ratios of particular microbes absent or too much in our guts. This next section is entitled Voltage. Vibrant electrical elements are cradling us in their wisdom atmospheres, and we need to take advantage of them by raising our voltage as high as possible on a daily basis. This is why our spiritual practices are so important. They bring up our voltage, which then can provide the energy of repair and sometimes at an incredibly fast rate, hence miracles, twinkling of an eye healings. I mentioned in a previous sharing that voltage is everything. Jesus was an energy master who could change one rate of vibration to another and increase the voltage necessary to perform his miracles. In the Bible we read, "And the blind and the lame came to him in the temple, and he healed them all." The great physician can repair electrical imbalances with time-defying speed. He has the voltage. He is tuned into the Godhead. This is what our practices are trying to do. Expand our energetic potential to be able to receive these incredible voltages of repair and regeneration energies. But they have to be matched. If we're below the frequency, we can't benefit from the higher frequency. That's just physics. Of repair and regeneration energies in nature and in the cosmos that are part of God's plan for all humanity. And we wrote, we must relax our tensions and trust that there is a plan. And part of this plan is this bioelectric field that God has provided for us. From Ethical ESP. When man unites spiritually with the soul of nature, psychic phenomenal powers through nature processes are demonstrable in their highest quality and are of utmost value to the spiritual life. We are responsible for preparing our vessels to handle the voltage in a healthy way, because our teachers have also cautioned us that that same light that can heal and enlighten can also burn and destroy. People who try to push the envelope and use their will rather than God's will to speed up the process of progression, to want things out of timing, will be corrected, sometimes literally zapped, by that same electrical voltage energy. The next section is entitled Solar and Lunar. If we would like to unite with the higher resources of nature, we must understand how a very important equation plays out in our body, and that is the balance between the lunar and solar influences playing out in our natures. This is a key area to understand how the codes of nature work through the alternates of lunar and solar energies in our day-to-day lives. From Ethical ESP. One of the great benefits of me doing this talk was getting to reread Ethical ESP. I mean, Maurice knows more about it than I do, but it's loaded. You know, it's in a weird organizational form, so you got to hunt for stuff, but it's loaded. To me, it's loaded. Is that right? Where was I? Balancing those lunar and solar. This is a key area to understand how the codes of nature work through the alternates of lunar and solar energies in our day-to-day lives. And this is a quote from ESP. To understand oneself, one must see nature's lunar and solar energy fire mirrored in his body. Through the lunar energy action, one is receptive and permissive. In nature's positive solar fire, one is a projector and a builder. Henry has instructed that our daytime emotions and actions are often the result of influences that we received during the previous night's sleep as we attempt to balance the lunar and solar influences. So why do I wake up some days and got this wild whatever? I could say the devil made me do it or whatever, but it was probably what I was working out through the lunar actions in the night. And then all of a sudden, it's because it's etheric, it's imprinted into your own matrix, you download it, and it becomes part of your behavior. It's in your etheric body. I'm going to say this again. Henry has instructed that our daytime emotions and actions are often the result of influences we received during the previous night's sleep as we attempt to balance the lunar and solar influences. Without our conscious awareness, these complementary energies are working to guide us and heal us. Again from Ethical ESP. In the day, man enacts outwardly the lunar brain suggestibility of the night, received from the retained solar fires in the body and in nature. His desire to care for his body, his instinctual appetites, and his hidden hungers are manifested during the day. These are gathered from the night's induction, working with the psychical lunar brain. I feel we need to be continually aware that we are under the influences of these tremendous electromagnetic energies flowing through us in the day and in the night. Balancing these lunar and solar energies is key to manifesting the ultra sense perception that I talked about at the name claiming service. Achieving the ultra sense perception requires perspective, requires us to utilize third aspect solutions whenever possible to lift ourselves out of dualistic, dichotomistic thinking. And we cannot reach this perspective of understanding if we have low voltage. You just can't juggle all the balls. Henry, when one unites with a systematic process of study to make holy the process of nature, he will reinforce and activate the lunar and solar sides of his nature, and he will free the positive action of his mind, that he may work with nature to heal, to restore, and to remain attuned to the life or cosmic force supporting all life in this eternity. And last but not least, the last section is entitled Spiritual Scientists. From Jonathan Murrow. The marriage between the scientific and the spiritual will give birth to a science of genetic understanding that will unite man with all stars and galaxies in their songs of creation. The scientific and the spiritual must become interwoven if we are to progress as a species beyond our current level of understanding and functioning. Behind the veil of genetic complexity and the laws of cause and effect can be found a very profound spiritual simplicity that defines a universal and eternal perspective of how life operates and who we are as human beings. The mechanics of spiritual evolution are even more complex than the inside-outside and outside-inside dynamics of human physiology that I've been talking about this morning. Each life allows us to produce an energetic matrix that will be the imprint or template or foundation for our coming lives. In the present moment, we are making the matrix for our physical bodies and our etheric bodies for some future life and time which is yet to be determined. We will incarnate again with the base materials that will reassemble themselves in our new embodiment in human form. Every person on earth, every second, is shaping and forming the energetic matrix of who they will become. Everything we do, think, and feel now will eventually contribute to our next life. Henry. In each life, one builds his future appearance through his thoughts, feelings, and acts, especially in the latter part of one's life. he prepares the etheric mold for his next life. That means that some of the human genetic and non-human mitochondrial genetics are in etheric form, being imprinted into the matrix blueprint for our coming lives. That's a miracle. It's a miracle that our teachers have told us can only be solved and understood when the scientific and the spiritual understandings of life are wed in one interconnected knowing or niscience. This blending of science and spirit must include an understanding of the interflow between universal, eternal, cosmic, earth, and human energies and actions. From Ethical ESP. When man unites spiritually with the soul of nature, psychic phenomenal powers through nature processes are demonstrable in their highest quality and are of utmost value to the spiritual life. If the system of Niscience were to be patented, it would be considered the most advanced and comprehensive formula of genetic sculpturing ever produced. The story of creation lives in every fiber of our being. We are microscopic imprints of God's macroscopic system of creation. Excuse me, we are made of stardust and microbes. Every particle of creation lives in a miraculously one-accord reality, if we could only see it. Universality is the key, connecting all the individual chains of eternality together in one symbiotic whole. Anne Reed. May the two in every part of me become the one in every part of God. The spiritual scientist of the future will have the right blend of elements to understand that we are being created not just through genetic codes, but more importantly through what our teachers call divine image design. Through our practices, we have the opportunity to do our own genetic engineering and to substitute the divine image energies in place of our ancestrally inherited images into the future matrix of our coming lives. Anne Reed, the ancestral image is the foe of spiritual individuality. Spiritual individuality blossoms through the sanctified energies of the image of God. The inner and outer dynamics that I talked about in relationship to how our cells operate are also at play in our spiritual evolvement through the right application of our practices. Jonathan writes the following in his book, The Divine Image. The inner cleansing and healing of the DNA, molecules, genes, chromosomes, and cells through the image of God are synchronized to the outer world energy dynamics and cycles of the moon, the suns, the planets, the stars, and the galaxy. There you have that other example of inner and outer on a larger cosmic scale. Thus, a true spiritual transformation involves inner and outer energy processes that contribute increasingly to one's communion with the Spirit of God, within the soul, the higher self, and the divine image. Thank you, Jonathan. So as we travel along the spiritual path, it would be helpful to remember to slow down our rejasic tendencies and be more patient with ourselves. From Psalms. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the heathen. I will be exalted in the earth. Spiritual transformation is multidimensional and takes a lot of time to be realized. We are still quite young in eternal time. In closing, this quote from our beloved Henry Colton, for those of us, myself included, who might be impatient with their spiritual progress. From Ethical ESP, man is an entitized particle sustained by universal cause, corrected by equation. Billions of years have been required to develop him in his present state. And the punchline, billions of years are yet necessary to perfect him as he is imaged in eternity. Bless you.